heavy disc because the speed disc is not cutting through the frost. The heavy disc is. That's what we bought her for. But it doesn't handle rocks the same way. Ouch. I'm just going to close my eyes and pretend I didn't see that. On my way to start the day on a very icy Sunday. There's about an inch of ice coating everything. Pretty slick. Down to my office to catch up to some bookwork. Whoa. Some much needed bookwork that I've been postponing, or no, avoiding, I guess you could say. Or I guess just not prioritizing, because I've been doing other things on the farm. But I hear the grain dryer going in the distance there. Just finishing up the last of the corn harvest. And it sure is nice to get that done before we get a rain on the cobs like this, because it sure is hard to combine corn that's been rained on. All iced up is hard to dry, let alone hard to thrash. But I'm going to try to park myself behind the desk and get done some useful desk work. But first, I have to work on my presentations for Iowa and customize them. I might just spend the morning on that. I have two presentations. The one presentation I've put together, don't have to put a lot into, maybe I'll just update it a little bit. It's to do with my progression through the years as I started out with 4 colonies, and just some of the trials and tribulations and some of the, just an overview on how I built my operation and how I focused on certain things to allow that growth. Process and procedures. That's one presentation. That's pretty much ready to go. The other one is indoor wintering. I think of beekeepers down in Iowa want to hear a little bit of a perspective on setting up a winter shed. Not a big fancy elaborate one, but just the basic simplicity of indoor wintering. Just talking about the basics. And I can bring them that. So I'm going to put a little bit of, I'm going to bring some numbers into it. Some, what do you call it? Advisory notes from contractors, from professors, and then just showing them what I do. Looks like we're in the Bailey season now. So let us see what the shed is holding itself at. It's 0 degrees outside and it's holding at 5. 5.5 on the interior of the shed and 5.4 on the exterior of the shed. This one's reading 6 and 6. So it looks like my modifications with the baffles on the air intake has worked perfectly. Simplicity at its best. One of the things about putting together these presentations is it forces me to review my shit so I know what I'm talking about. And I've made these presentations and I try to update them as I go just so they don't get stale. I have a lot of trouble with trying to present something that's the same over and over again. So I like to keep it fresh And by doing that, I update them. In a way, I guess it's to make the presentation less familiar. So in a way, when I prompt myself, I don't like reading from notes. I can't do that. When I stand in front of an audience, my eyes go blurry, so I can't read the notes anyways. And my knees are just shattering away, so everything is looking like that. So I can see pictures though. And I prompt myself on the conversation on what I put together. So when I familiarize myself with these types of things, then I can bring more of a discussion in front of everybody than a lecture, I guess you can say. What I'm looking for is material on indoor wintering. Some of the technical aspects of it. So I'm looking in the Prairie Beekeeping Manual. This is actually the copy I got when I started beekeeping, when I took the beekeeping course when I was in university. So this is like 23 years old. It was put together and it's continually updated. It's probably one of the most important books, but I can't find my recent copy. So I'm referring, because all the technical data is pretty much the same. This was put together by the Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Alberta government. So I'm just looking at basic data on wintering a colony indoors. And it is showing me that every colony, single colony, will give off between 8 to 28 watts per hive. And it's going to release 3 to 10 grams per hour per hive. It exchanges the air into the shed with 0.4 grams of water vapor. And within the shed, as it's warmed, it takes on 3.4 grams of water vapor to be expelled. Blah, 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 blah. Just shows how you can set up proper ventilation within the shed. Talks about light traps. He gives you a little bit of some data in regards to recommended airflow through the shed. I reviewed all this as I was building my first sheds, and then I just kind of, from then on, I just kind of added on to it in regards to experience. And I pretty much have this. So then I also have, I'm going to present a little bit on cooling a shed. And this is a little bit more recent. This is a little bit old also, but at the same time it does provide some data on cooling down a shed, a 36 by 50 by 16. So basically what my shed is, 1,800 colonies. So it gives you the specs on what is needed in regards to cooling capacity. So there's some basic data behind the requirements of refrigerating a winter shed. And this is something I'm going to be looking into maybe. Wonder if I could just, for what, I don't want to, I don't know what I want. I just need to be able to take the warming periods through the fall and the warming periods through the spring and just be able to more predictably hold them through those periods of time to make it easier on the bees and to make it easier on myself. I want to be able to move my colonies in end of October, regardless if there's a warm spell goes through or not. This cool air that's come through this fall has been a treat because it's achieving exactly what I want. But I want to do the same, even though it's warm right through Remembrance Day, right into the middle of November. Sometimes we get that extended warming period. And I want to have them tucked away by then. Not only to preserve that winter nest, but to also preserve my workload and my stress. But more importantly, I think it comes into play if we can maintain a cooler temperature as we get the variability coming into spring. So, you know, if we get a kind of a warming spell in March and it gets up to 15, let's say sometimes up to 20 degrees in the middle of March, it forces me outside to where we get a cooling period. And, you know, the variability, if I can just hold the bees in the shed just a little bit longer to get them into a little bit more predictive weather, and I think it's going to help benefit them. Just get them through that extra 2 weeks. So really, I was quoted it's almost like $80,000 for 7 to 10 tons of refrigeration, and that was a few years ago, so I imagine it's up a lot higher than that. So I have to be able to justify the expense on a week or 2 weeks in the fall and a week or 2 weeks in the spring. That's basically the only time I'm going to be using that unit. That's hard to justify. And I've been doing this for quite a number of years, and I've been doing it successfully without it. So what is exactly the importance of it? So I just have to be able to justify this and put priority over it over all the other projects I want to get built here on the farm. So at any rate, through this presentation in Iowa, I'm going to be talking a little bit about the specs needed in the shed as we build the shed, as we maintain the shed, and then some of the conversation around the opportunity the shed provides us as beekeepers. The opportunity of bringing the bees out of the harsh environment of cold winters. It's maybe more of a dramatic impact up here in Manitoba than it is down in Iowa, but maybe the advantage of beekeepers down in Iowa, where they're not getting the severity, but they're getting more of the fluctuation between cold weather and warm weather, and the bees, as they go broodless throughout the fall into winter, when they experience those warm periods, you know, they get active, they get flying, and if they're flying, they're dying. So just trying to maintain the integrity of that winter nest throughout the variability that the winter throws at them. And they could very easily do it with a wintering shed like this. An investment into a bit of refrigeration to provide that stability, and bingo, you got yourself, you don't have to flock down to the southern states. You can just hold them tight in that shed and take advantage of the broodless period. And these are the other advantages these sheds can provide. We're looking at just the basic function of wintering colonies right now. But if we can hinge on the advantages of what these sheds provide us, like the broodless period, this is an opportune time to treat our colonies for varroa mites. I mean, they're broodless. They're all in one spot there. They're in a managed, climate-controlled building. We're not dealing with the weather. We're not dealing with the challenges of accessibility to the yards through the winter. They're broodless. It's just an absolute ideal time to treat for mites. So whether we do that with oxalic acid, right now I'm talking to a safety consultant on that, just getting his professional perspective on what it actually means to treat a colony inside a shed with oxalic acid. I mean, we can dress ourselves up with protective gear, but I'm looking on the lingering residue and the effects that residue that is lost through treatment, what that does to the health of the beekeeper. Also, you look into the science that's been put into CO2 and CO2 treatments of the shed, which is absolutely terrifying, but at the same time provides us with this opportunity to be able to manipulate the CO2 environment within the shed, which preserves the bees but kills the mites. You know, I think we as beekeepers need to be digging our teeth into these a little bit more and get more professional guidance behind it, because we sure as hell don't want to hurt ourselves or die fumigating a shed. I mean, that's the same as fumigating a shed. There's extreme hazards to increasing the CO2 limits up to 4%, 8%. Could be to the colonies themselves, but if you walk in, or if you have one of your family members walk into the shed, out like a light, just like those slurry pits in the hog barns. And then you have one person go in and the second person go in and the third, it just could be a catastrophe. reason enough just to stay the hell away from this whatsoever. But the opportunity lingers. And we should be able to do things like this in a safe manner. We just need a bit of guidance. Anyway, that's kind of what my presentation is going to be. I wanted to talk a little bit about this to get my juices going in my head. Crazy! But it's just something I'm going to bring to the convention down in Iowa. I'm really looking forward to it now. Now that I'm digging my teeth into this and get this presentation together.